Welcome to the Research Works podcast, brought to you in association with Curtin University and the Healthy Strides Foundation. Your hosts are Dr. Dana Poole and Dr. Ashley Thornton, and together we will interview world-leading researchers in the area of child health to support your practice in being more evidence-based.
The team at the Research Works podcast acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and waters on which we live and work. We pay our respects to all First Nations peoples, elders past and present, and would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we record this podcast each week, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. We recognise their continued connection to this beautiful budja we call home.
Welcome back, everyone. We are back after our whole EACD series, and it's so lovely to be back in the studio again. Hello, Marissa. Thank you for joining.
Hello, Dana. Thanks for having me again. I'm very excited for today because today we have Jacinta Quartermaine from the University of Queensland on the pod. Welcome,
Yes,
Jacinta.
welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so lovely to have you. And I know you're feeling self-conscious about it, but I do want to highlight how cool your background is, actually. I'm like, all I'm looking at is all the games and the books, and it really does speak to what you do for your profession. We'll get more into that in a little bit.
Yes.
But today we're going to talk to you about your latest article, which I absolutely flippin' adore. It was published recently in May 2024 in Developmental Neurorehabilitation. Yes. And the article is called Reflections on Participation at Home as Self-Reported by Young People with Cerebral Palsy. It's so great, Jacinta.
It's wonderful.
Well done. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We love it.
Yeah, I can see why.
Thank you.
We're very excited to get into this article in more detail. But before we do, as always, let's tell all our listeners a bit more about you, Jacinta. So Jacinta Quartermaine is a certified practicing speech-language pathologist and researcher based in Brisbane, Australia. She's a research fellow with Choice Passion Life and the Queensland Cerebral Palsy Register, completing research on the participation experiences of young people with cerebral palsy and childhood onset physical disabilities. She was awarded the 2021 Matt Keith Most Promising Career Award and the 2023 Southern Family Cerebral Palsy Centre Best Adult Paper Award from the American Academy for Cerebral Palsy and Developmental Medicine for presenting her findings from her PhD research. Jacinta, amazing.
So great. Those awards are just absolutely spectacular. That must have been so amazing to have received them. I was following you on X and saw that had happened. So brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. No, it was such an both amazing conferences to be at as well. But it was, absolutely great to get those awards.
So good. Congratulations. And also we must put in there, because you are in, I do understand, you're in limbo land. You've just finished your pitch. You've literally submitted it, done your oral presentation, and it's all done. So we can't say doctor just yet, but let's just say it. Dr. Jacinta Quartermaine.
Congratulations. Yeah, huge.
Thank you. All very, very new. And I think, we're probably only a week or two off being completely finalised. But yes.
That's great. Or by the time this airs, yes, you definitely most certainly doctor
hopefully,
at that point.
Yes.
No, well done.
Thank you.
Done. Well, we've told everyone a bit about you, but, you can get to know people a lot more.
Yeah, this is the really technical question.
This is the way.
Okay, icebreaker question. Mm-hmm. Seems like a simple question, but it's of high importance. Jacinta, what is your tea or coffee and or routine in the morning, and why? Or during the day. It's whatever.
Let's talk about the 24-hour. Yeah, let's talk about the 24-hour.
Go on the journey, the caffeine journey. Okay. All right. Well, I'm big advocate for caffeine, but it probably depends on the day, I think. So I'd say wake up first thing, coffee. Probably another couple of hours, coffee. And then I think once we hit afternoon, I'll wean it off, maybe like a caffeinated tea, a Dilmore or something.
Yes.
Early afternoon.
Yes.
And then we'll switch into more of a herbal situation late afternoon. I think it's a bit of a gradual caffeine withdrawal throughout the day.
I like it. It's very planned, which, I like.
And I like there's some routine with it as well. And you can, there's lots of options. Gives you choice.
Yeah.
I like it.
Depends.
Yep, I like it. I really
Early
like
afternoon. Bit of a switch. Thank you. Thank you. What about you?
I love having coffee in the morning. It's definitely important just for waking your entire body up. And I feel like it gets your body, in the right routines.
Yes.
I've been known to have coffee as a nighttime beverage, before I go to bed.
Oh,
and it's because over many, many years, I've had so much coffee that I'm not entirely sure it makes that much of a difference in terms of keeping me up. I find it to be a comforting, nice hot beverage before I go to bed. But because I've been getting made fun of with that so much, I've now just really embraced tea as well. So my routine is coffee in the morning, 9:30 a cup of tea. In fact, my friend Ali at work makes me a cup of tea at 9:30, and it's usually an Earl Grey with a little bit of milk. And I put my milk in first before the hot water goes in. And I learnt that from the English.
Ah.
Yeah. Well, I think I went to something and I was pouring my milk and they're like, no. You have to put the milk in first. So I was like, wow, there's stuff to this, right? So I just do it. I don't know if I can really taste the difference. And then I have a herbal one at 11:30. Then I'll probably have a coffee around 1:30. And then I don't drink anything else for the rest of the afternoon in case I want to do some exercise and I don't want any liquids in my belly. And then I have 2 hot beverages before I go to sleep, and I try not to make them coffee anymore. Sometimes I'll do a matcha. I think matcha, because it's really green, feels really healthy. No milk in it, so you just do a little mixy thing.
Yum.
And then a final cup of tea before bed. And then I'm out.
I love how much we think about this and know it.
That is detailed.
It's detailed, right? So important that people didn't need to know about me, but there you go.
That's awesome. Look, mine is similar to yours, Jacinta. I've weaned down to 2 coffees a day, one in the morning, one in mid-morning, and then I switch to herbal tea. I always have a herbal tea before bed. It's even if I get home at 10 o'clock, which doesn't happen often, not from being out or doing something, I will still have a peppermint tea.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'm having that tea at 7 p.m. and going to bed. So it's really varied. But otherwise, I'm generally a week-long black drinker. Trying to adjust to the black coffees, can't always do it.
Right.
So sometimes I'm going to say my order just because I know you want me to share it.
I know, I do want you to share it.
Come on.
Yeah, thank you.
I asked for a flat white with lactose-free milk, half hot water, and all it means is less milk.
But it just sounds so complicated.
Well, look, they tell me there are more complicated orders.
Okay.
They don't mind.
They don't mind?
No. Every now and again I'm too embarrassed to ask, but the regular place I go is fine.
I like that. That's good. That's really good. Well, that's a good coffee order as well. I like it. I'm a long black drinker. Yeah. Jacinta, what kind of coffee?
No, needs milk. I'd go with flat white.
Flat white, okay. Very Aussie.
Yeah. Just standard. Yeah.
It's good. No, it's good. I think everyone applauds and thanks us Aussies for the flat white.
Yes.
We're well known for it. Now that we've talked a whole lot about nothing, but also very important, let's talk a whole lot about something. Let me give you a bit of a rundown about what we're going to talk about today. So this study explored the home-based participation of young people's cerebral palsy, describing factors that make participation easier or harder. This study included 15 young people's cerebral palsy aged between 15 and 26 years with written reflections, photographs or videos about their home-based participation experiences. Following thematic analysis, the self-reported reflections identified themes which emphasize cerebral palsy characteristics, thoughts, emotions, equipment, environment, supports and inclusion as important factors that influence home-based participation. Young people's cerebral palsy largely described the home environment as an inclusive place to participate. So good.
So good. I loved reading this. And as I work as a physiotherapist and, thinking of the goals we often work on with children and young adults and, often it can be based at school or the community, but obviously home is a huge part and it's where they spend most of the day and where they get that autonomy and independence. So I loved reading through your paper and so there's a lot of exciting things that we can share today with our listeners. But to jump into a bit of a background, I guess the aim of your study was looking at that home-based participation of young people with cerebral palsy in terms of influencing factors that might make participation easier or harder. What inspired you to conduct this study on home-based participation?
Oh, that's a good question. I suppose stepping back and looking at the age group, I think first it was just that we really wanted to know broadly how these young people were participating. It's such a critical time point for their participation. They're developing so many new experiences of employment, education, relationships. And I think we wanted to do this across kind of two main areas, the home and the community. So we do have another paper coming out focusing on the community. But the home particularly, it's a place where we spend majority of our time. It's such a core element of our day, right? So if it's not set up to support us, then that's going to have a flow-on effect to our entire day. So we really wanted to know, and it's not something that is focused on as much, like you said, where people are more so, how are they going in clinic, in therapy or in school or, you know, those kind of things out in the community. So we really wanted to start at the basic, everyday core place that where they're participating and how the home is supporting them.
Yeah. So important. And when you think about all the stuff that I do at home, whether it's relaxing, whether
it's a big part of the...
It's, interact with your family members. There's so much there. So much there.
And it's also what sets you up to be able to do things beyond the home as well, because it's that getting ready, it's the activities of daily living, it's, you know, basic life skills like, you know, eating and drinking and washing and all of those 100%. Things that are really important.
Yeah.
Can you give us some background on how this study, you mentioned a little bit already about a community-based research, but how it fits in the context of research in cerebral palsy and youth participation?
Yes, absolutely. So this is a part of my PhD, and this is kind of makes up the second part. So the first part was we were just wanting to know more about what we know about participation in young people. So we did a systematic review and a Delphi study. And what we found in that systematic review was that we were starting to look at these older age groups, but primarily in CP research, we have focused more on the school-aged years. Yeah. And then when moving into these older age groups, a lot of the research and participation was looking at proxy reporting from their caregivers, and a lot weren't including the self-report from people that had more complex communication needs. Yes. So they were two areas that we really wanted to focus on. So that kind of led to us needing to focus on the self-report and the participation experiences across really core participation contexts.
And that's so vital, and I love that you brought that up and leads perfectly into my next question, because you're absolutely right. So much of sometimes the qualitative reports are very proxy, you know, it's the people around them that comment on that individual's experiences. So what you've done is incredibly novel. I'd love to dive into that a little bit more in terms of your qualitative methodology and what was used. Please tell us about that, because that is so cool.
Yes, absolutely. So it was a qualitative descriptive research. We used reflexive thematic analysis, really focusing on the subjective experience of the young people. But in terms of the very inclusive aspect of this, we used quite novel and inclusive data collection methods because we wanted to give young people the option based on their communication needs or whatever they would prefer to communicate their experiences with. So we gave people the option to provide reflections, and we followed these people for about a month, and they could provide those reflections via written or typed reflections. They could take photos of their experiences to go with those, or they could provide video reflections as well, which kind of became little video logs about their day. So we really encourage people to give kind of daily reflections if they can about the participation experiences they did that day. And it really worked.
Such a great idea.
It really, really worked. It was obviously something a bit new, so we weren't really sure how it was going to go, but it kind of gave the young people autonomy over their data almost, and they almost had this sense of responsibility for it, and they really, really gave their all to it, and they gave us such lovely insight into their life. And it really allowed people with that range of communication or mobility needs that flexibility with whatever would suit them most.
Yes.
And it really worked.
That is so cool. And so did you still have like an interview guide in terms of main questions? Or were there things that how did you prompt the participants to really capture what you were hoping, otherwise it could be very, very diverse as well, couldn't it? But how did you sort of home it into this area?
No, it could be diverse. And to be honest, we were encouraging them to talk about whatever they wanted to talk about.
Yep.
They did have kind of liberty with that. But we had quite a structured participation framework and self-report methodology developed. So it had kind of 4 phases to it. And one of those phases were that we had an initial meeting with the young person where we stepped through, you know, what we mean by participation, and we gave them some prompt questions. So we really set it up so that the start of their reflection would be kind of context giving. So today I was at home, I was exercising in my garage, or I was cooking in my kitchen, and that kind of set the scene. And then answering either something to do with what helped their experience that day, or what didn't help, or what hindered their experience that day.
Okay.
And that was kind of the only prompts, and then they could really express that however they wished.
That's really
in their
great.
Reflections.
And then what about in terms of the time period that you collected this data over? Like, was there like a period of time for them to capture that experience?
Meaning the month that we followed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that one. Yeah.
So we chose the month. Oh, ideally, we'd love to do it for a very long time, but within the restrictions of a PhD, the month kind of allowed us to capture things that were happening every day for them, really regular participation experiences, but also some things that happen maybe less regularly every week or couple of weeks. So that was why we'd chosen that month period, and it worked quite well to give a bit of an insight into their general experiences.
Well, look, I think a month is actually really great, because you don't, like you said, like if it was just a week or 2 weeks, you wouldn't capture the things that happen, you know, a little bit more sporadically. Any more than a month could be quite burdensome.
Absolutely.
You know, and you want them to actually capture as much of the data as possible, rather than be, I forgot about this because it's been going on for 2-3 months. Like, it's
too long.
Yeah.
It did. Yeah, so it was a good amount.
It's a nice balance.
I love it, because you get to capture, you know, like the experiences that may happen over a month, the highs and the lows.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's done in real time, you know, that they could capture these experiences and share it however they wanted to or needed to, makes it so
less recall.
Yeah. So authentic.
That was one of the strengths that we found. It kind of removed that recall bias, because if, for example, if something happened and they're in that moment still feeling everything they're feeling, they could just write it on their phone or video, you know, audio record themselves sharing what happened or taking a video in the moment. It's less so than if we're doing an interview a few months down the track and having that, you know, time space. It worked well for that.
Yeah, because you can often, like, if you were to recall things, you either recall them with rose-tinted glasses sometimes or catastrophized.
Yes, it's true.
It was either really bad or it was really great, right? Yeah. Like the happy medium in between can be harder to recall. Yeah.
No, I agree. Yes, definitely.
I love this. And I think when we get down to the conclusions, I think this is why what you pulled from it was so robust, is because the way it was captured and over that time frame.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, if we jump to your participants, how did you recruit the participants? Because obviously you needed them to be on board for this month period and be open to sharing their experiences. Can you tell me, how you recruited them, and also the criteria for their inclusion?
Yeah, so they were primarily recruited through the population-based statewide register, so the Queensland Cerebral Palsy Register, who I work with, which is such an amazing resource and really allowed access to a lot of young people with CP. So we initially sent it out to everyone eligible in this age group. In terms of criteria, the only exclusion criteria that we had set were that if they had any other diagnoses that would potentially confound their results, any like autism spectrum or things like that could also have a big impact on their participation. We were just wanting to focus in on how people with CP were participating. And then for this initial study, we did also keep it as people with more moderate to profound intellectual impairments, just to really focus in on that self-report and see how this study runs. But people, with no or mild intellectual impairments were included as well. And then, of course, any communication method, any motor ability, anything like that, we're very open to all of those participants. But recruiting through the register did allow me to be able to be a bit purposive and really for those people with communication support needs as well. They often don't think that the research is actually wanting them. It just based on my conversations with them, a lot were excited to be, asked to do this kind of research. It was the first time they've been asked to do something that's asking their opinion on something. And they were just really excited. So I think, being able to do that through the register and actually, contact those people specifically really helped.
Because what you've said is as your inclusion criteria is often the exclusion criteria for so many studies.
Yes.
Yeah. What about, so you said, a lot of the children could participate using any method. So we're talking lots of AAC, we're talking about different kinds of devices. Can you give us a bit of a rundown of what that looked like?
Yeah, so we had a broad range across all. So we wanted to have everyone across the different Viking speech scales to really represent the different types of, motor speech. So we had people who were very verbal communicators, had very minor or no impairment to their communication, all the way to people who are nonverbal and use AAC. So we had some users who use more high tech, like Pro, Low, Quo, To Go, for example. It's a high tech AAC. And some that were using more like typing or gesture or some formal sign and Macaton. So we had quite a range. Which really, it worked quite very well because those people who were AAC users could still, some of them were still able to type, or they were able to video themselves using their devices to express their experiences.
So it's amazing because it allows you to get that broader spectrum then and get the viewpoints of people that sometimes we might not get to hear, their experiences.
And I think a major thing was that differentiated from something like a focus group or an interview was that they didn't have to think on the spot and then answer. They had that time and space to sit with what they wanted to say, prepare it on their device or think about it, look over what they had written and make sure that it really captured what they were feeling. And, it gave that time, I think, as well, which helped.
It was before we started the podcast, we were sort of, I was saying to you, I'm like, oh, you're a speechy. I would say when I first looked at the work you do, I thought you might have been an OT, but actually the fact that you are a speechy doing this kind of work has a whole new perspective, doesn't it? It's like you must surely feel that because that's so cool.
I definitely understand why you would think it was OT. It's very OT space. But I think it has given me that lens of looking in on how important it is for these perspectives to be included as well, and knowing that they can be if we just use the right methods. And how important their voice is to this kind of research.
Can you explain to me as well? So we've talked about there's got a broad spectrum in terms of communication abilities. The participants that you had, what was their diversity like in terms of motor and physical abilities?
Yes, So we were very open with whatever type of CP, whatever presentation of motor abilities they had, but we did try and again have a range of people across GMFCS and Max as well, which we did end up. So we had people across all levels of GMFCS and Max and the Viking speech scale. So we had that broad range of motor and communication abilities as well.
That is so cool. That is so cool.
Yes.
But before we get into the themes, because we really want to, we always want to talk about the results, but I think how you actually even got there in terms of interpreting the data that you got, this is going to be quite different, isn't it? And I know it was a thematic analysis, but how did you code the videos and how did you do that? I'm so curious.
Yeah, no, it was definitely different. So we utilised NVivo, which was amazing. We weren't really sure at the start of this. It is such a new, a different methodology for this population, what kind of data we would get. We weren't sure what kind of photos or artefacts people would choose to upload. So we kind of were just waiting to see how we were going to analyse that. But all of the photos that we were given kind of went with a written reflection. So someone would, for example, would talk about their experience using a longer handled wooden spoon and how that would assist them with cooking. And then that would go with their written reflection that day about how they used that type of equipment to help them cooking. So those then were both coded.
Wow.
Under the same kind of code and theme. And then in terms of the videos, they were transcribed just as you would any sort of interview recording. So I went through and transcribed that audio, and then the written reflections were basically already transcribed and could go straight on. And then the photos were coded, with the written reflections as well. So it worked quite well.
Yeah. What a great protocol for everyone else to really think about using and including in their qualitative studies.
Incredible. Yeah. And it allows you to kind of filter down to draw these 5 central themes. And I love how you did that. You had those 129 codes, which then were grouped into 20 sub-themes. And from there, you get these 5 really robust themes that kind of summarize everything you pulled together from all those photos and videos that I'm sure it took hours upon hours to sift through.
It would have been hours.
But this is something we really want to, I guess, focus on because there's so much to this. Is you sharing with us, I guess, the 5 themes.
Yeah.
And even some of the main points that you really took from this.
Yeah, so I guess an overview of the 5 themes would be the first theme, my CP characteristics can make doing everyday activities in the home more difficult. There were 7 sub-themes within this, but it really captured the types of difficulties that were coming with that diagnosis. So difficulty moving their body, their hands, communicating and speaking, capturing all of those kind of sub-themes. The next theme was more at that personal level as well, to do with my own thoughts, emotions and sense of achievement and how that influences the things I do at home, which was a really interesting theme to come out, and they had that insight. But then the next 3 themes really moved to that environmental level. So things to do with having the right equipment and environment enables me to do the things I want to do at home. Having the right caregiver support helps me to do the things I want to do at home, which was so critical for participants, both formal supports and therapies, but also informal supports from family and friends, and how important that is. And then the final one was to do with being accepted, included and supported by the people in my home, and how that influences the things that I do, which was, another really important theme for participants.
Look, you've summarised that beautifully, and it takes great talent to summarise so much information into one really cohesive, even sentence. So this is table 3 in your paper, which you have beautifully presented, and there's great quotes. But the thing that really stood out to me about this, which is very obvious to you, I know, but it's on the ICF, it's the personal factors and the environmental things that came out, wasn't it? They were great. Yeah. They often, like when you draw the ICF, you've got, body structure and function and activity and participation at the bottom. It's like, and then it's the personal and environmental factors. But they are such influential components to participation at home, aren't they? Like, what were your thoughts on all of that?
I think I was surprised just based on what we focused on in therapy. It's more the personal factors. I think we're working on function, we're working on confidence, and we're working on those kind of body function level goals. But then, and it's the same in the community paper, it's the environmental level that's making the most difference in their opinions. And that is just not something that we focus on as much as clinicians, the environment around the person. And especially in terms of that social aspect, the acceptance and inclusion of other people, and being real advocates for these young people in that way. I think that was a bit of a surprise for me when doing this research, how important the environment is so much, rather than them reflecting on their function or those kind of elements.
And my light bulb moment as you're talking about this is we often talk about, there's very limited upstream effect from body structure and function, activity, participation, right? We sort of know that we always hoped that in the olden days, let's say that, if we worked on body structure and function, we could influence activity and maybe influence participation. We know more and more that that's not likely. If you work on participation, you can improve participation. Yet, if you work on developing a person themselves, their personal factors and the environment, you could have that sort of almost upstream effect onto participation. It's a different perspective.
No, that's very interesting. I definitely agree. And
it's a huge thing because you're thinking about
these young people were saying.
The overall well-being.
Yeah.
Like, that mental and emotional support as well, and improving on those things by having, like you said, that positive environment, the social supports at home and being accepted.
Yes.
And really being heard is what I kind of pulled from them. It's each person being heard for about what they enjoy, what they want to do with their life, how they want to, whether it's relax or spend their day.
And it's just the people around them. I was just really pondering, like, this one got me. It was like my own thoughts, emotions and sense of achievement influence the things that I do at home. I don't know. I think you've got to think about developing the person having their own sense of who they are, how they belong, right?
Yes. So that's something that really came out from participants as well. I think we really focus on making sure that they have everything that they need, right? That they are healthy and they have the supports that they need, and, they have food and healthcare and those things, which are obviously all very, very important. But it's also, they need that sense of, aspiration, goals, a purpose, and that sense of achievement and all of those things that really came out as, if we're talking about a positive experience that really pushes their participation to more of a positive way, it's having that extra level of something to look forward to. And I think as clinicians, we really need to make sure that we're thinking more holistically about the person as well, and making sure that they not only have all their basic needs met, but they also are thriving and
being the best version of themselves. We often talk about that, right? But it's going beyond a simple goal. It's thinking about the context and the environment for goals. I mean, we're still talking about their body, the first theme, cerebral palsy characteristics can make doing everyday activities at home more difficult. So we're talking about their body, their communication. Yes. There's still value in working on these things because it helps them to actually access what they need, right?
Yeah, and a big thing that came out from participants was how managing these difficulties at home, so their symptoms of pain and muscle tension, but also when they are in the home, they have these moments of downtime almost, and that allowed them to become more reflective, and in turn things to do with managing emotions and mental health and all of those things also came up more. So I think from participants at that personal level, what they were saying is that having more accessible services within the home at times that suit them to manage those kind of personal factors was also needed, or really giving them the tools and strategies to be able to, manage that muscle tightness and pain at a time that suits them. For example, a lot were doing stretching or trying to relax all those muscles and using heat packs and things just before bed, which is, a tricky time for services to be able to give them that support. But if we're giving the young people and empowering them with the different skills and techniques that they can then use. So definitely at that personal level is very important as well. Yeah.
And that relates to, I mean, they all relate, but the fifth theme that you've got here, being accepted, included and supported by the people in my home influences the things that I do. What are some of the standout things that you remember relating to that theme? Because I imagine the quotes that would have come around that would have been pretty significant.
Yes. No, there are some amazing things. I think the people in this study were all very lucky to be living in such supportive environments, I think, as well. A lot were still living with their family, and they really reflected on having very supportive and positive home environments. So like a theme, a quote would be, I was home and talked with my siblings, and that was heartwarming. After a long day, it's peaceful to come home and to settle down and see people who are familiar. So I think that's something we can all relate to, that the home is a place for you to reset and build those really deep social connections. And that is such a valuable thing that happens in that home environment. But I do also want to mention that this wouldn't be the case for every person living with cerebral palsy. There are people, that would have very different home environments. And this research really just highlights what is possible when we are setting up those home environments in a really positive and supportive way, and how much that can make a difference. Yeah.
Gosh, that's such an important point, isn't it?
So many, but these can be almost taken, like you said, these the participants you had all had, supportive families or units around them. But even in people that may not, I think the take-home points in terms of, wanting to be empowered, utilising equipment, having the right caregiver supports would translate across the board. Yeah. And so I think it's something that we can take no matter who we're seeing, which is what I love about this. And it really highlights to our role as therapists as well. Like you said, often we know about, we highlight participation and improving quality of life is a driving force behind what we do. And at the end of the day, goals and what we work on are individualised. But it really has to be we really have to listen to the child or the teenager, the young adult, to hear what it is that they ultimately want. Yeah. Because we are all different and then our job is to support them in that. Often it is providing equipment.
It is, but then making sure the caregivers know how to use them well.
And it has to be translated, doesn't it? So it can be implied in the home. And at the end of the day, the participant can be the one empowered. And
that's right. It's the whole family unit are essentially the people that we're servicing. It's not just the one person. It's not just the young adult with cerebral palsy, is it?
No, absolutely not. And I think that translates then out in the community as well, in the school environment, workplace environment.
Absolutely.
Advocating for that person as much as we can with peers and colleagues and when we move out of the home as well. I think it's, such an important thing for us to be advocates for them in their different environments.
And I guess the positive I would also see from this is for families who, you do see in the literature reports of guilt, am I doing enough for my child? Actually, what these young people are reporting it was really positive. So having those opportunities to have those conversations with siblings when you come home and it's a safe place, you are actually meeting their needs and they're really happy and content by that. It might not seem like a lot sometimes, but maybe just being there and understanding them, being a safe place is actually so important.
How important that is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And also translates, I think, for service providers as well, that us creating these accessible home environments is working, and we need to continue doing that for these individuals, because it's really showing us that when the environment is set up for what they need, they have the capacity to, participate in a range of activities. And it's, for these people it was working and really showed that. But it was interesting then comparing that to their experiences later when they moved out in the community, which will be the paper to come, which was very, very different to their home experiences.
Wow. We'll make sure we have a chat to you about that as soon as that's published. Jacinta, we'll have you on again to continue that, because I think that's so vital, right? That's the next stage of it. We definitely need to talk about that. Before we talk about too many more I want to talk about the implications this has on policy and practice, because we've kind of dabbled into that already. But I know that whenever you do a qualitative paper, once you summarize into 5 themes, there'll still be some standout thoughts and impressions that you have as a researcher, even just quotes that stick with you. Is there anything that comes to mind for you about that, Jacinta, that really stood out that you were surprised by or reinforced something for you as a clinician and a researcher?
So many things. I think I think it would be to do with what I mentioned before about how when we've set the environment up for them to succeed, it can be such a positive experience. But I think in terms of service provider and things that we want to work on next, there are still some very key goals that came out from this in terms of empowering young people with the skills that they need to be able to target their needs from the home as well. Like its services at flexible times and things like that. But I think it's also the whole picture of creating those aspirations and goals and having that meaningful element to their daily experiences as well, something to be excited for. I think really came out as well. These people had motivations and things that made them persevere and look forward to each day. And that was really, really important to the young people as well. And a lot of things.
There's a lot, isn't there? I know, it was a very broad question. But Jacinta, I think what the language this uses, and I know that sometimes NDIS gets a really bad rap, but we also have so many significant opportunities with NDIS. the National Disability Insurance Scheme in Australia, for those outside of Australia, that support our young people. And one of them that I saw in your paper as well is the role of support workers, which there's so many support workers now. I've never seen in my career this many support workers that are aimed at helping our young people to access the community and to participate. And there's a few sides there, aren't there? Like, do you want to discuss that a bit? Because I read that with great intrigue and agreed completely.
No, it was very, very interesting. And at majority of the time were the biggest influence, especially to our young people that had more motor difficulties. Their support worker was the most important part of their day almost. But interestingly, there was also some participants who are sharing that when their support worker doesn't show up or shows up late, or when they change quite often, as it can be seen as a bit more of a transient career in the experiences of these young people, that has such a big influence to their daily life. I've got a quote here from one of the participants. So I've had some long-term support workers that have finished now, and I'm finding it difficult to find people that understand me and my needs. A lot of time and effort is spent training people, and they don't see this work as a career, and I have to keep finding new people. That was such a core influence to that day, to their days where they move over and they have to then teach someone from scratch again how to support them. That really has a big influence on their day. So that would definitely be something
It's true.
To work on if we could.
So what we could do to support workers as such, and, and make, really realising the importance of their career and their, in terms of development and skills.
They are such an important.
It's huge. Yeah. And like I said, consistency is a massive thing, because the amount of time they're spending with the participants and the clients is huge. It's a majority part of the day, and that level of, I guess, companionship and friendship would be a huge part of it too.
Huge. Definitely, not just their activities of daily living or helping them, get dressed or eat, or obviously those very core things get around in their community, but it's their friend as well, and it provides an emotional support. And when that gets changed, it's a huge influence to so many aspects of their life. Yeah,
and it's so there's so much in that. Yes, I would agree. There's a lot of, it's quite a transient career, and I think there's a lot of allied health students who often take on that role for extra experience. And so there's almost this ticking time. Yes. Everyone kind of knows once they've graduated, they'll lose them. But they're often around the same age. If you think about allied health students, are usually around the same age. So calling them a friend is something that will be quite easy to say, but at the same time, they're also paid to help look after you for some very personal things that many of your friends wouldn't do for you, like necessarily. So it's also quite complicated with that too, isn't it?
It's a complicated dynamic. Yeah, keeping that professional relationship as well when you are such a big part of their every day and their family almost. You're giving support within the home every day.
Exactly.
You
feel that sense of sadness when that person steps away. You'd be happy for them to, I see it all the time. They're very happy they've moved on to their career, but they're very sad to have lost them as part of their core group of people. And I wonder whether we can really think about, because I do think that, the scene of support workers has been so explosive. It's, so many people in there. But in terms of can we create a career pathway here? Credentialing, supporting, because it's such a huge skill set, isn't it? We're not talking about, what you just mentioned there was quite broad already, let alone some medical things that sometimes they take on. Definitely.
It's such a broad and important career. And I think really changing our mindset to it being a career. It's not a job always that you're doing in the interim to get some experience in, the disability world. If you're doing allied health, undergrad, it's also a long-term career in itself, and you are doing such an important job for these young people, for everyone, not just young people.
So definitely. Much value in that. Gosh.
You've given us so much to think about. So thank you, Jacinta. So I'm very excited to hear your next paper once that's published and ready.
We're talking to you, yes.
And I guess you've obviously finished in this world of finishing your PhD as well. So after all of this, where to from here for you? Or for the research in this area as well?
There's so much that I want to do. But in terms of my next steps now, so kind of always the goal was, this initial study was to look at that top level across community and home, what's going on at that broad level. And now I want to focus in on specific contexts and really try and make a difference.
Yeah.
Like what can we actually do and have some steps in place. So I'm initially going to be focusing in on workplaces and employment. And also, that would be my first steps, but also wanting to look at those education settings as well. But employment was something that kept coming up for these young people as a place that they really need more support. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be my first steps.
I love that.
Awesome. I can't wait because I love the way you view things and the way your process and the way you've looked so closely to hear exactly what the participant has wanted to share. And from that, you've drawn so much. So there's a lot of exciting things to come.
Yeah, and just highlighting such an important area for everyone. Look, we're not done yet, though, of course. Before we wrap all of this up, we do have to go to the most popular segment. In fact, his head got a little bit big when we were at EACD because people wanted to take photos with him and he was very shocked. And yes, he was well recognised. So, I mean, he was wearing a bright orange shirt that said Producer Ed. So everyone knew exactly who he was, but he was very popular. Let's head into the next segment. Let's go for it. Producer Ed. Let's go to Tell It to Ed. This is a 60-second pitch to the common man. And Ed, as you know, doesn't have a background in child health, but he has been listening to many, many conversations now. I think something like 165 conversations. So he usually has great insights into this as well, Jacinta. So Jacinta, I'll get you to summarise this area of research in about 60 seconds or so to someone who doesn't have a background in this area. And Ed, I'll get you to ask a question from there. So take it away, Jacinta.
Okay, Ed, in this research, we've explored the participation experiences of young people that have cerebral palsy, and we wanted to better understand what factors make their participation either easier or harder when they're in their homes. To do this, we collected regular reflections from young people with CP and followed them for approximately 1 month or so. And from these reflections, we found that young people largely described their home environments as inclusive places where they had the equipment, accommodations and support that they needed. They highlighted the importance of feeling accepted, included and supported by the people in their home. And as clinicians, we really need to establish supportive environments for young people with CP to enable them to be more independent members now of their communities. And the findings from this research really exemplify that when the environment is set up to meet their needs, young people with CP can really do a range of activities and participate. Probably be
lovely. Right. That was brilliant. That was wonderful. Thank you, Jacinta. That was great. All right, Ed, over to you.
Yeah, that was a great conversation. I really loved listening to all of that, and I think I've mentioned this before. It's always hard to come up with a question as the conversation kind of evolves, and the team does such a great job of kind of navigating the conversation to cover all of the topics. So
basically saying we've taken all your questions.
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
I'm not left with a lot to ask. But I think that initially my question was about other environments, and you touched on work and education in school, and I guess that was possibly my question as to maybe. And this is to preempt it because obviously you've said that you're looking at this in the future. What you might expect to see based on what you've seen in the home. And then I guess the other question, if that one really isn't going to go too far, was probably just to see if there might have been some sort of follow-up to see changes over time. So whether these kind of responses might be different when they're a little bit older.
Those are actually really great questions. They're good, Ed.
Yeah, they're great questions.
They're good.
Okay, to answer the first one, so we have now looked at, participation in the community, and that was across a range of that it was the same age group. So some of our participants were at school and we followed their experiences in high school. Some were at university, some were trying to gain employment. We just followed their everyday experiences in leisure and shopping and everything as well. And we found that across those contexts, it was much more of a balancing act between a range of factors that both helped and support and hindered their experiences when compared to the home, as I'm sure we can expect that. The environment changes so much. And yes, their needs were being met to different degrees across those environments. And what was the second question again? Sorry.
It was about maybe possible changes to these kind of responses or over time. Over time, yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be an amazing study to follow up with these same young people if we can in 5 or 10 years and see how their experiences have changed and the types of factors that would influence that, whether it is an age thing. These young people are at that core transition between, pediatric and adult services, and there's a lot of factors at play. And changes to services in that time as well, and us improving those sorts of things and how that's influencing
that would be
their
such
experiences.
significant
I would love
work.
to.
Yeah, think about how much life changes from your 20s to your 30s to your 40s, and who's around you? Are you living at home? Have you moved out? Who are the people around you that look out, help to look out for you? Significant. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. That would be very interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll look forward to that research
I look
too.
forward to
You're so busy now for the next 10 years. Well, we really do want to thank you so much for being on today. We'll put a link to this paper on our website, so researchworks.net. And remember, there's a form there that you can fill out as well if you want to keep this as part of a record of your CPD requirements. But Jacinta, just congratulations on finishing your PhD. We're calling you doctor now.
Yes, well done.
Very significant. But thank you so much for going through that paper in so much detail with us today.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's been excellent.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. We'll stay online after we say goodbye because we'll need to talk about how we schedule your next one. But to all of our listeners, I hope you really enjoyed that. We'll talk to you all again really soon. Thanks and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.